What are the 70 weeks of Daniel? Part 2. The three divisions of the 70 weeks. In Daniel 9:24a it says, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. Daniel's 70 weeks, or 490 years, are divided into three periods. 7 weeks that equals 49 years, 62 weeks that equals 434 years, and then a separate third period of 1 week that equals 7 years. 49 years plus 434 years plus 7 years equals 490 years. In Daniel 9:25 it says, Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. That's 69 weeks total. The street shall be built again and the wall, even in troublous times. We know from history that the streets and wall of Jerusalem were rebuilt during the first 7 weeks of the years of this prophecy. This time period equals 49 years. We know from history that Jesus Christ the Messiah was born in Bethlehem and that he entered the city of Jerusalem to offer himself an atonement for sin on the very day that the second time period of 62 weeks ended. This time period equals 434 years, plus the 49 years are 483 years. So the first two time periods of 7 weeks and 62 weeks, or 69 years, gets us to the 483 year mark, and the Messiah entered the city of Jerusalem on that very day riding on a donkey. That leaves 1 week or 7 years of time in the prophecy. What's different about the last week or the last 7 years? Is there a time gap between the 69th and 70th week of Daniel? Daniel 9:26 says, and after, notice that word after 62 weeks, the word after lets us know that there is a time gap between the first 69 weeks and the 70th week of Daniel. We know from the New Testament that this time gap is known as the church age. We learn that during the intermission of the 69th and 70th week, known to Daniel as a time of war and desolations, until the end, which is the second coming. Daniel 9:26 says, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. Daniel tells us that during the period or time after the first 69 weeks and before the final 70th week that the Messiah would die, but not for his sins. This occurred historically around 33 AD. He also spoke of the people of the prince that shall come. These are the people of the Roman Empire. The prince that shall come is another name for the Antichrist. These people would destroy Jerusalem and the temple. History tells us that Titus Vespasian, the Roman general, destroyed the city and the temple in 70 AD. The time between Christ's death, burial, and resurrection to the time of the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple was at least 37 years. This interlude has lasted more than that. It's gone on and continued for nearly 2,000 years. When will the 70th week of Daniel begin? We're told that in Daniel 9:27. And he, speaking of the Antichrist, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. 1 week, the 70th week, 7 years left in the prophecy concerning the nation Israel. The third phase is the 70th week, 7 years, which is still future and awaiting fulfillment. It will begin after the rapture of the church and end with the second coming. You'll notice on the chart on your screen, there are 7 weeks that has been completed. The walls and so forth were rebuilt during those first 49 years. And then the 62 weeks. And that at the end of that time period, 483 years, Jesus entered the city riding on a donkey. And then in this interim time, known as the church age, it's an undetermined amount of time. Jesus was crucified, buried, rose from the dead, and the temple was destroyed even as was predicted. The church age begins at Pentecost and ends with the rapture. Then the 70th week of Daniel begins, the 7-year tribulation. And on this chart, 7 years or 7 weeks of years, 49 years, 62 weeks. They add together to be 69 weeks or 483 years. At the end of that time period, Christ dies on the cross, raises from the dead. There's Pentecost. God pours His Spirit out on all flesh, and the church age begins. When the fullness of the Gentiles have come in, then the rapture will occur. And when that occurs, sometime after it, the 7 years of Daniel begins. That will end with the second coming of Christ with his saints, and the millennial reign of Christ on this earth for 1,000 years will then begin. Now, to receive Jesus as Lord and Savior, you can call 1-800-JESUS-2000. That's 1-800-JESUS-2000. Until next time, remember to search the Scriptures. Jesus said, "They are they which testify of me."